Brandon Cooks had a corner under him and a safety over him, and you really just couldn't get to him, or simply because Michael Thomas is more open. Whatever the reason being, I don't believe Sean Payton plays favorites. Brian TNR is going to disagree with me heavily on that based on Brandon Cooks' last game against Detroit here. I tend to lean more towards what Nick Underhill said and things like that. But I'll let y'all have at it. I just want to throw those numbers out there because regardless, one, I believe this should have stayed in-house, and two, I don't think that Cooks can say he deserves more if that's what he's saying when he's being outperformed by somebody else. To me, you go do better than the guy next to you and then demand more. That's what I think on that one. Brian TNR, you go first. Brian in California, you retort.
Okay. First of all, let me respond to Miss Judy's comment when she said, is Brandon Cooks maybe being misunderstood with his comments? The answer to that question is flat out no. You can't misunderstand certain gestures. If somebody cuts you off in traffic and flips you the finger, what's understood doesn't have to be explained. Brandon Cooks actually told you exactly how he felt. The reports that came afterwards let you, clarify exactly what it was. And above all else, the guy had the unmitigated gall, as Stephen A. Smith would say, to stand there and say, no, I don't regret my comments. At that point, after all of the backlash, would have been a great time to show you're a team guy. Instead of just saying it and saying, you know what, I was frustrated. I'm a young guy, wanted to help my team, my bad. But instead, he basically stuck his chest out and said, yes, I said it, and I'll say it again. So for me, I look at it and I tell myself, it's not that I think it's a sign of things to come. I think it's always been there. It just hasn't been allowed to be at the forefront because there was never a reason until this season. And this season, he's being outshined a little bit. Not that I think he's jealous, but I do believe Brandon Cooks has his own motivation. He's trained in the offseason with Antonio Brown. They're very good friends. They tweet and text all the time with each other, call each other all the time. And this is not coming from me. This is coming from Brandon Cooks. He wants to be the next Antonio Brown. Unfortunately, if you haven't paid attention to the Saints versus the Steelers, Antonio Brown is pretty much their only weapon outside of Le'Veon Bell. Well, in the Saints, it's a pick-your-poison type of offense. We've discussed it ad nauseum. You pretty much select a person on that day, and that's who's going to have a good game. The Saints, outside of Drew Brees, are the worst team, and I know I'm going to sound like a geek saying this, but they're the worst team to select fantasy football players from because you never know who's going to have a good game. And that's I don't hate Cooks. I hate what he did. I hate the fact that he's basically baited us all into thinking he was different than a Terrell Owens. And not that he's that bad, but I think you can absolutely see some traits of give me the damn ball. And I don't want that on the Saints team because that's never been how the Saints have operated. The last time we saw the Saints operated when a guy was the sole focus of the offense, it was when Jimmy Graham was being triple covered. And as we all know, that didn't work out too well because Jimmy Graham is no longer here. Right. Now, for me to get on to our guest.
Well, hold on, Brian. Let me throw this in real quick. One, try to keep it a little bit short because I also have the professor who wants to get in a word after the other Brian. So don't give me a full monologue. Hit him real quick and then wrap it up.
We'll do. Rapid fire. For those who haven't caught on, the other Brian and I don't like each other. We'll never like each other.
But you do respect each other.
No, I don't respect him either. I'm going to be honest.
Oh, my goodness.
But what I will say is this. Prior to us not liking each other, there were some times when he would make a valid point. But in fact, I will give him credit for this by far before anyone ever said, the Saints should look out for Brandon Cooks. It was Brian in California. I give him full credit for that one because he's an Oregon State alumnus. He knew about Brandon Cooks long before anyone else. If I'm not mistaken, he even said the Saints were going to draft him long before anybody ever said it. So I give him credit for that. It was very, very cool to see somebody be that direct and that right and basically back it all up. So I give him credit for that. Where we fall apart is when you become a Brandon Cooks apologist with all of the evidence is there. This didn't come from the New Orleans Saints. This came from Brandon Cooks in his camp. It's almost like the Surgeon General putting a warning on a pack of cigarettes. He told you exactly what was going to happen when you smoked it, but you smoked it anyway. That's exactly what's going on with Brandon Cooks right now. He's telling you, his agent is telling you, Brandon is not happy in this offense. And yet Brandon Cooks' apologists will tell you, well, I don't really think it's that. But it's not coming from anybody else but Brandon Cooks. It's his camp. It's his agent that's trying to seek a deal because he doesn't think where he is the best fit for his skill set. You cannot dispute when it comes directly from that person. You can't say Brandon Cooks isn't a selfish guy when he's telling you directly, yes, I was being selfish. What more do you want?
What he said was, this is not coming from a selfish standpoint. That is what he said. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. I mean, maybe he just said that.
Miss Judy brings up a good point. Bryan, California, you got to retort. Remember, let's keep this PG, folks. I like it so far, but just a reminder, because I know you guys will never be caught on Bourbon Street giving each other a hug. Keep it clean.
Oh, heck no. No, and I'm not even him and I have an agreement on how we feel about each other. That's neither here nor there. Here's my issue with the Cooks thing. I'm fully in the camp of never should have said what he said. Just from a team and a fan standpoint, I don't want to hear that from my player. Especially if Julio Jones comes out and says that, if Odell Beckham, when guys producing on that level, tier 1 guys come out and say it, it has a different sound because everyone in the room goes, yeah, why didn't he get the ball? And here's where I come from. One, this stuff, it didn't have anything to do with the Rams game. The Rams game it's kind of the last straw type thing, but he's been frustrated at times throughout his time in New Orleans, and some of that has to do with his role has changed each year. He came in the first year, he's basically supposed to be the number 2 guy for Jimmy. He frees up Jimmy, and Jimmy frees up him. Then Jimmy's gone. Last year, he has to adjust to being the number 1. He's getting the touches. He's getting the focus. He has to learn how to be the guy defenses focus on and how to accept that. Then he comes into this year. Now Michael Thomas emerges. Now Michael Thomas is becoming that guy, which, from a scheme fit standpoint makes sense. And it's not like Michael Thomas isn't producing and earning those touches, but the guys had to change his role and change his position in the hierarchy of the team each season. Anyone's going to be frustrated from that. That's just any player. The part of it I don't have a problem with is him wanting to have the ball. And if you read or listen to the full statements, his position is, when I see the ball, good things happen for the team. More often than not, I make big plays. And his catch rates are going to be a little bit lower, just speaking to your point, Deuce, partially because he's running more deep routes. He's running more, plays where Drew can underthrow him or overthrow him. The safety can come over and make a play. He's not getting as much of the short stuff, the intermediate stuff that Thomas is getting, which is going to help your catch rate. And that's not saying Michael Thomas doesn't have better hands. Michael Thomas's hands are insane. But looking at it from the standpoint of, a competitor, from a former athlete, although very clearly not at that level or even dreaming of it. Even my dreams, I know I'm not that good. I don't ever want a guy on my team, especially at a skill position, at a production position, who doesn't want the ball every single play. And I don't have a problem with him saying it in the locker room. Now, this would be the question I have, and I don't have an answer to it, which is why it's a question. Did Brandon Cooks tell his agent to put that stuff out, or is this an agent going, he's going to hit some pretty good numbers this year. He hit some really good numbers last year. If we start putting this noise out, maybe a team tries to get a trade where he can be more featured, or worst case, the Saints put over some money, try to get an early extension, because that's an agent's job. So the question I have is, who instigated the release?
Let me answer that for you.
Of the whole thing.
Let me answer that for you. There's no need for Cooks' agent to make that move, because Brandon Cooks is still in his 4th year, and the Saints have the option of picking up the 5th year. So there's no reason for him to make that move right now as far as trying to seek more money, because he can't get it. The Saints own his rights. They can still pick up the 5th option, and Cooks is staying put no matter what happens. Now, if you want to know, not even from a Saints point of view, from a Cooks point of view, you are absolutely right when you say he's a dynamic player. And that the Saints can, if they give him the ball, good things happen. We saw that with the 2 80-plus yard bombs that he received this year. But if you can get somebody to throw you the ball like that more often, and you can get your numbers to where you are compared to the Antonio Browns, your idol Steve Smith, and guys like that, You're not going to get that with the Saints. Personally, I don't want him to be Marcus Colston. I want him to be fiery. I want him to demand the ball. I don't want him to do it in public, number one. And number two, I feel like if Michael Thomas becomes the number one option, who in the hell do you think has two cornerbacks that can stop Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks, especially with Willie Snead roaming underneath? That's my problem with Cooks. If you had stayed quiet and not demanded the ball, Michael Thomas would have drawn the double coverages, and you would have been one-on-one on the outside with whoever you were with. And I'd like my chances with Cooks one-on-one on the outside. It's almost you cut off your nose to spite your face. That's why I don't like Cooks right now.
All right. I want to get Professor here because Kyle told me Professor has an opinion on this. Professor, you there?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Hey, to my Rev, Miss Judy, and to the two Bryans. I just want to add a few points to everybody. I've been following the Saints 42 years. I'm a lot older than everybody on this line. A couple of things, and watching the evolution of things with football. I think, number one, going to my man Brian's point, is that social media is destroying the brotherhood of football. And Deion Sanders was talking about it a little bit Sunday night on NFL Network. I think a lot of immaturity and a lot of things that should be kept in the brotherhood should not be vocalized publicly, and it leads to strife and dissension. And so I do agree with Brian, and I agree with Duke, that certain comments you just should not make because it leaves the media, which is a manipulative source, to then create even more troubles for you, which leads to locker room problems. And I think too many of these young millennium football players, I'm kind of old schoolish, that are now just voicing however they feel on social media, Twitter, Facebook, is destroying the brotherhood. I'm a member of a fraternity, and we have a code that what goes on, even if we fight each other, it stays in this room. When we walk outside on the campus, no one knows that we have been fighting and rugging. No one knows that I have a beef with you. And I have seen for the last 3 years something with the Saints that continues to me to be one of the problems with this team. There is locker room dissension. And I've been saying this for years on Professor Speaks and Saints News Radio. Check us out on Wednesday night and Friday night, those two shows right here on the Saints News Radio Network, that if Sean Payton does not get this under control, because when there is dissension and stuff going on, one of the things that cannot happen with the Saints, and it appears to continue to happen with the Saints, is that he then immediately trades the people. The Saints are not better off without Jimmy Graham and Darren Sproles. They're not. They're not at all. And if the Saints think about trading Brandon Cooks and think they're going to be better off, they're not going to be, because if you look at the Saints' record, and here's my statement, and I'm going to let you guys go because I know you got to wrap up the show, dudes. Here's the ultimate thing, everybody, I want everyone to keep in mind. Here it is. The New Orleans Saints, since August of 2014, their record is 20 wins and 34 losses. We can sit and discuss about Brandon Cooks. We can talk about the bad draft. We can talk about all of it. The essence of the problem with the New Orleans Saints at this time, at this moment, on December 6, 2016, is Coach Sean Payton is not getting the job done. The Saints have won 20 games, and they have lost 34. That includes 3 preseasons and 3 regular seasons. If you go back, and whatever is the problem is pointing that something Brian talked about real early in the show. This job is not getting done. I said this before. I believe Coach Payton has taken the Saints as far as he can. I said this on my show when the Saints got to 4-4. It's a trick. Don't buy into it. It's a trick. The Saints they have done this now for 4 out of their last 5 years. They get to 500, and then they can't go any further. The other essence is the New Orleans Saints do not show up to play football in September and November, and that's why they continue to have these struggles. For whatever reason, the essence of this problem goes back to the coach. And I know Mr. Benson has given him an extension, paid him all of this money, but I don't know any NFL coach with a 20-34 record.